Hey everyone, welcome back to the Daily Blend Show, episode number 46. And you're probably wondering or saying to yourself, hey, where have you been? You were doing so good at doing 2 episodes a week for so many weeks, and then you just dropped off. So there is a story behind that, and I'll talk about it once we get into the show. But before then, let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. So we're talking about what we're talking about. You got that right. So we're going to talk about a lot about brand building, storytelling, kind of ways to think about communicating and engaging with folks. It's really about kind of preparing or arming you up for what undoubtedly will be probably 2 weeks of time in December that you've got a little bit of personal time and some ability to reflect on 2021 and prepare for 2022. So with that said, let's jump into the show. I mentioned at the start of the intro that this show took a little bit of a break, and it was a little bit of frustration, a little bit of bad policies on my part, and a little bit of bad luck. So I use GoDaddy to host my website. So that means I rent server space from them, and I host WordPress. So WordPress is open source, and it's, for all intensive purposes, a platform that you install into a server. It uses third-party plugins. One of those plugins, or a couple of those, had some bugs or issues. You could call it malware, but I think it's just bugs, and corrupted my site. And normally what you do is you delete everything except the content folder, put a fresh install, and you're up and running. Super easy. Been doing it for 14 or 15 years. For some reason, this time, when I tried to do that, it wouldn't refresh and pull up the content. So I tried to restore one of the 4 backups, and unfortunately, none of the backups worked. They were all corrupt. And then the local copy that I did have on my laptop, well, I lost it when I brought my laptop on an airplane and someone spilled water on my laptop. So I was out about, 20 hours worth of work that was just sitting on my desktop that I forgot to sync back to the process. And then, my site, which probably had 1,500 posts. So I updated my site, fresh new WordPress install. So if you go to dailyblend.com today, it is there. It looks pretty good, almost as good as it used to look, maybe a little couple tweaks here and there. It doesn't have all the content. I am in process of moving to Squarespace. I looked at Wix, I looked at Shopify, and the reviews seemed better on Squarespace. I like the feature set, I like the templates, I like the ease of use. The price point wasn't bad either. So I am moving Daily Blend to Squarespace. And I am likely going to move the Daily Blend podcast, which is the house music show that's been going on for about 15 years, over to SoundCloud. And I'll talk about that more at another episode. But for now, you're going to be viewing Daily Blend on WordPress. And probably come Christmas time, it will be over on Squarespace. It will look super crisp, super clean, and just easier for me to manage. So I thought I would just share where the show's been. I've got a couple episodes that I've recorded with others that I'm finally getting back to, and those are going to get out in the next week or two. So, one of the things you're going to see is, and I've sort of talked about this and, written about it in the past, at the end of the year, I'd spend, a week looking at all the digital content I make and kind of reflecting on personal brand. And so, I've been looking for frameworks and ideas and kind of what other people are doing. So the first 3 stories particularly are talking about, branding and how to do that really well, and just ways to think about it. And, one is, much more of a detailed framework. The other is, a way to kind of tell your brand instead of defining your brand. And the last one is just a real life example. So let's jump into those 3 things. So story number 1 is from Dory Clark. And Dory Clark is a very smart woman who does great lectures and keynotes. She's written a handful of books. This actually was one of her, I'll say it, older keynote speeches at Google. And I just liked it because it went into a more detailed step-by-step guide into assessing your unique strengths and developing a compelling personal brand and ensuring that others recognize the power and contribution you can make. And I thought this was like a really good starting point of just like assessing yourself. And in the post, we've got the like 50-minute YouTube video from Dory's keynote, and it's a little on the longer side, but I think it's definitely well worth the watch or listen. The next one comes in, and the story headline is called Story Brand, Brand Script, Donald Miller's 7-Part Framework. But there's a better story here. BPN, protein company out of Austin, Texas, has a really compelling CEO who has done a great job of, telling his brand story and bring you on the journey and growth of the brand through his own like personal development as an athlete and, showcasing like how they're growing as a company and what they're thinking about. And one of the, and by the way, their protein is fantastic. The field bars are out of stock, but when they come back into stock, I highly recommend them. The protein's great. One of my favorites. But back to why I'm, highlighting them. So in one of their more recent videos, they, talked about how they brought in a company called Story Brand to examine how they build their story and brand. And so from that like little clip on the video, I went out and figured out that they're using Donald Miller's 7-part framework, and I looked into that. And the image that we're showcasing is about how that framework was applied to like Star Wars. And it's really kind of neat, and it kind of brings it to life. But I think if you figure out like who you are and what you're known for through like the Dory kind of framework, this is really how you like tell your story or think about your story narrative. And so the third kind of leg of this trifecta is brand building with Ryan Serhant. And I think I've got his name right. So for those that watch Bravo, yes, this is that same real estate agent guy who wears fantastic suits, great watches, and has a ton of energy. And so what Ryan figured out is how can he use social media to help amplify his voice and his delivery capability as a real estate agent. And, when we're all in like one of the biggest job transferring errors likely of all of our lives, the market's red hot, why not think about building your brand, either whether or not you want to leave or just be better at where you are. And so Ryan walks through his playbook for how he thinks about expanding in all ways. And there's really 3 elements he calls out. So the first thing is identify your core. Like, who are you and what's your and? So, what's your main thing and then what's that other thing? So for him, he's a real estate agent and media. So for me, I'm a consultant and I put out content. And I put out podcast content in the form of spoken word, and I also do like music stuff. And so be consistent. And if you listen to the 3-month gap in my releases, you will see that I get an F in that, but we're fixing that. And then the last thing is shout it from the mountains. And I feel like this is where so many people fail, right? They're like almost afraid of it. And I look at, the perfect example is I've got a cousin in real estate, and she just pumps content out, content, new house, new showing, new house, new clothes. And, at first you think of it as like corny or like, geez, another thing. And then it just becomes like embedded. You're just like, oh, my cousin's a killer real estate agent and just closing deals. I have a similar friend that did this who is a lawyer and just pumped out content of like lawyering, what he's doing, how he's bringing success to people, why he's amazing. And at first, like I had some friends say, oh, that's corny. And then after a while, you had those same friends being like, man, he's killing it. And so, Ryan does a really good job of explaining this, and I've linked the videos. I've also linked his like YouTube and his social stuff. I think it's just worth following, and kind of cool there to see how someone's doing it really effectively. So that sort of wraps up the first 3 stories about brand building, and I hope this fourth story somewhat connects, or at least you can see the bridge. And I found this really interesting article when searching for these frameworks about Richard Branson, the guy that does everything Virgin, right? That's his brand, right? Started record labels, started space, started hotels, and it's really like the article from the Inc. is when to push, when to pull back, and it's really saying like how do you deal with like burnout versus go 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 go. And, the quote I pulled out of this article is staying ahead of the curve, predicting market conditions, spotting opportunities before they arise, and forecasting the wider economic, social, and technology landscape will really help you minimize risk when starting a business. And I thought this was really cool. It's like, he totally comes out and says, hey, I've been known to say, screw it, let's just do it, figure it out. But, it's like, hey, can I think about what's happening in a macro sense? Can I also see what I know based on like what part of the niche market I'm playing in? And then when you see something and you're like, this is a gap, I could go do this, go take advantage of this. And, I think back to like 15 years ago and I was like, no one was putting out DJ podcasts. I was like, I got to figure this out. And I did. I was like, all right, I'm going to be one of the first people on iTunes. And I remember there were only like 5 DJs in the world that had podcasts mixes on iTunes. And then I didn't put my foot on the gas. I said, oh, I got other things to do. And I wish I had, continued to push when I was ahead, because I really saw like a gap in the marketplace of like consistent content where you're like, okay, I could put out club mixes and weekend mixes and then like make this a profitable thing. And look, that's like a really simple example. But I thought it was really cool of like thinking about, when you're building your brand and like seeing gaps and trying to hit those gaps based on like what's going on both locally and then a broader sense. So go check out the article from Jessica Stillman and, have a bit of read on Richard and his point of view. So the 5th story is really about just like, well, the 5th and 6th is really about like my just general frustration lately about repetitive tasks or the lack of what I'll call digitization. Right now, we've got a ton of tools, and some are integrated, others are not, but they're not really working for us. And I've had the opportunity to, see certain solutions that really help like serve up information, and using unstructured data and then presenting it to you with like recommendations. And we're getting closer to that, but it's still not as like dialed in of saying, hey, 10 people are talking about the same thing in your company. We just found a gap in your calendars and we scheduled something and put together an agenda. Like I want that as my like North Star, white whale, however you want to think about it. And so, lately there's 2 things that are just kind of frustrating me. The first is email and the second is CRM. And so what I've seen or recently been exposed to is called FlowWrite. And if you've listened to the show, I'm a huge fan of Grammarly. And Grammarly does a really great job of helping you refine your email once it's been crafted. But it doesn't actually help you craft it. Whereas FlowWrite actually, with a few kind of keywords and tasks, actually helps you like write the thing and does it through like AI. And obviously you get to, check it afterwards and make sure it makes sense. But this is where I think the market is headed, where you're almost like doing some like predictive text or talking into your computer or your phone and saying, here's what I'm trying to like accomplish, write this for me. And it's in beta. I've requested access to it. So if you're on the FlowWrite team, I'm going to tag you guys on social media in hopes that you see this and listen to this and grant me access to the beta. because I'm really interested how this works, and both in terms of like a professional and a personal, probably more in a personal setting. And I'll let you guys know if I get access to it and share kind of like my learnings and thinkings. So the second or sixth story, but the second technology one is I called it CRM that bends, and the solution is called Attio, and that's Attio. And it's a new take on CRM. And just looking at the screenshots, once again, it's like on beta and I haven't been accepted yet. But just looking at the screenshots, it reminds me of Monday.com or Smartsheet, where it's like, hey, this is a platform. But the difference is where like Smartsheet and Monday.com don't necessarily have like a central hub of information. This one appears to. So if you create like companies and contacts, it all can live in a central repository, but you can make forms and workflows happen, or at least that's what my takeaway was. So when I think about like the evolution of people using CRMs, you have some people who say, let me just keep it simple and like a HubSpot out of the box works for me. Or, hey, I want to like really tweak it and I need like something more robust like Dynamics and Salesforce, where I can tweak fields and change the way that, data is flowing and add forms and all this stuff and go crazy. And I almost think that this is like almost like a happy medium. It's like, hey, you can try this and you can see, what you need as an individual or what your company needs as an individual or as a company to make CRM work. And then after a while, you figure out, what? This works. Leave it be. Or, hey, let's take our learnings and let's move to a bigger, more established platform. I think both solutions have a lot of merit. And so, once again, to this team at Audio, I'm going to tag you in the post, and hopefully you guys will grant me access to your beta. All right, so, I'm talking about brand building. I'm talking about technology to communicate with people, to track your communications and get smarter on it. So let's talk about like, how do you do goal setting? And one of the things that I always like look at is I'm really good at putting to-do lists together, but maybe not good at like goal setting with metrics. And I'm struggling with this personally and professionally. And so I went and looked for people who had like better frameworks. And I really found just like a really simple thing that, is called GSOT. So goals, strategy, objectives, and tactics. And I set it up this morning of 4 columns, and goals is the first one. And so when I think about like goals, I think about, what's the big picture thing that I'm trying to do? And then, what's like the outcome I'm looking for? Right? What is the what? Then under objectives, it's like, how do I measure this? Right? And then from the strategy, it's like defines as to why you're doing this over something else. And then the tactic is like, the specific activity. And I think in the past, when I've done goal setting, I just jump to the tactic and I kind of skip the strategies, the objectives, and the goals. And when I'm like looking at the goals I set for myself, and I'll use an example. I said, I want to increase my web presence. And so the objective was really to increase visibility of me across multiple channels. And the strategy is to put content out and put content across channels. And then the tactics are how I do that and where I post. And, I want to like look at this as a very simple framework to say like, was I successful at this week? Yes or no? What was the primary objective? Did I achieve that? Right? Did the strategies work? Did the tactics work? And so, right now I'm just going to use this framework. It takes a little more time to kind of plan out your goals. I think like my whole goal setting this morning took me like 40 minutes, and it was for a few major goals. I'm sure once I get like more into it, it will be a little faster, but I like this framework and it's working for me, or worked for me today. And I think it's going to work. So I'll revisit it in a couple weeks. just to see if I've got any like changes or tweaks to it. But hopefully this episode is starting to like get your brain into priming itself for some time away to like reassess, who you are, what you're trying to do, what goals you're trying to achieve. And, hopefully you enjoyed it, and maybe share it with a friend or two that, is looking to like enhance themselves at their current role, looking for a new role, or just looking to change some stuff up. So as always, this episode is available on anchor.fm, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and YouTube. And you can check me out on Instagram at ReadDaily, Twitter at ReadDaily, and on LinkedIn, also at ReadDaily. And Daily Blends available on .com, Instagram, Twitter. And with that said, I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. And we'll catch you on Friday for the Friday Top 5. Till then, take care.